26th of May, and I'm delighted to have Steve Hamilton back again. He has been here for every book he has ever written. It's so exciting. From A Cold Day in Paradise to up here to The Second Life of Nick Mason, which I realized that Patrick sent out an e-invitation for The Secret Life of Nick Mason, but in fact, it's the same book. So, with Steve tonight, on the left is Boyd Morrison, who has been kind enough to come down from Seattle and interview him. And Boyd has spent the afternoon signing books with Clive Cussler in our back room for the release on Tuesday of The Emperor's Revenge. Very cool. And on my right is Robert Englund from the Arizona Republic, kick-ass investigative reporter and brilliant book reviewer. Yes. So, I know. Well, I've missed you because you sort of faded out of sight doing secret investigative work for the last few months. Robert's really been a wonderful source for authors coming here. He's written some terrific pieces in the Republic. I usually send you the link in the e-news so that you can read it. So, that's me. I'm going to get out of the way. Who's starting? You. You're in charge.
Me?
You.
I'm in charge. I like this. All right. All right. Well, you all are here because of Steve and the amazing new book he's written, Second Life of Nick Mason. I have had the pleasure of reading it already. You cannot put it down. It's a one-night read. Make sure you start reading it early, otherwise you're going to be up till 5 in the morning. So before we get to my questions, I would like Steve to just, for those of you who don't know the premise, to give the log line for it.
Thank you, Boyd. If you imagine that you're in prison and you are doing a long stretch, a really hard time, and you're not going to get out, and somebody makes you this offer that will get you out and will give you a chance to see your family again. And not only will you be out, the very next day you will walk out and you will walk into a whole new life. And you will suddenly find yourself living in this amazing townhouse in the nicest part of town, driving this amazing vintage automobile. You've got $10,000 cash in a safe deposit box every month. You've got a beautiful roommate. You've got everything that a man could want out of life. But the cost of this is pretty simple and pretty terrible, because whenever the phone rings, day or night, you have to answer it. And you have to do exactly what you're told to do, no matter what it is. No matter what crime you have to go out and commit, no matter what horrible thing that you never thought you'd ever do in your life, you have to do exactly what you're told, because that's the deal that you made to get out of prison. And now that you're out of prison, there's no way out of this deal. And that's sort of the quick log line of what the situation is that Nick Mason finds himself in.
And it roars. It's action-packed from the first bit. There are twists and turns. It's awesome. So, now, with this book, you have had a fair amount of notoriety. In fact, there was a story in the USA Today this morning, as I was reading it on the plane, about Steve and the deal with St. Martin's Press and how he changed to Penguin Putnam. Now, in a moment, I will ask you to explain what happened, but essentially, he changed publishers, and he will explain how that happened. The book is number 29 on the USA Today bestseller list today. And I understand there's some good news coming on the New York Times list. I hope I'm not giving away anything.
I'm doing this because it's number 15.
It's number 15.
Number 15. So, St. Martin's lost out on this book, and I'm reminded of that scene with Julia Roberts in Pretty Woman, where she
I know exactly the same.
gets thrown out of that store for being too shabby, and she goes and buys thousands of dollars of clothes. And so I wonder if you ever feel like going back to St. Martin's and saying, remember when you weren't going to promote this book? Big mistake. Huge. So, Steve, what happened with that?
You know, St. Martin's Press was my only publisher, and I was with them for 17 years, and I did 12 books with them, and I sold over 1 million copies of those books with St. Martin's Press, and I wanted to go back to them with this new series. I told my agent, let's go back. Whether that makes me the stupidest guy in the world, or the most naive guy, or the most loyal guy, I don't know, but that's me. Everybody had been telling me for years that I should leave St. Martin's Press. They said, everybody leaves. Why are you still there? I was like the one guy who's still there. But I just believed that we could do something. We could turn the corner with them, and that, you know, and that I would sort of prove to everybody that it was the right decision, you know. So I was all in with them for a long time, and this was the series where they said, this time, just watch what we're going to do. We're going to print so many books. We're going to do all this national press for the first time. You know, we're going to do these national profiles and then this media and these ads, all this stuff that you've never had before. And we were 60 days away from the release of the book. They were going to start printing the books the next day. This was last summer, and we finally begged them, and they finally showed us their marketing plan. And I remember the moment that we saw it. It was just like, this is a joke, right? This is like one of your old marketing plans from book 2. And basically, Steve goes on tour and drives around a lot. That was it. That was the marketing plan, you know. And it was just the most devastating thing, because it felt like all those promises that I believed. I was like Lucy with the football, and Charlie Brown. And if they were Lucy, I was Charlie Brown with the football, and it's like, and we just sort of realized it at the same time. This is Shane Salerno, who is my agent and is also a film producer and screenwriter. He did one of the Avatar sequels, and he's doing The Cartel. I mean, he's just my brother, you know, because he's been with me through this whole thing. And we were on the phone that night when we got this, and we're like, we have to leave. I mean, we're 60 days away. This is insane, but we have to leave because this book's going to die. We can see it happen. We can see exactly what's going to happen because it's happened before. This book's going to go out, and it's just going to, you know, it's just going to die. And it was just, well, we had no choice. We had to do, and it was absolutely terrifying what came next, because they were very clear, my former publisher, that you have just made the biggest mistake of your life. You have just ended your career. They were very clear about that. And that night, my wife and I, we were just lying in bed, staring at the ceiling. We couldn't sleep that night because we were just, I mean, we really believed in this book and in this series, but it's hard to hear something like that and not wonder if they're right. You know, I mean, all night long, it's like, maybe this is the biggest mistake. Maybe we just ended everything. I mean, I had left IBM. I had left my full-time career to start this series. I mean, we were about to have nothing. And, but we just had to do it. And finally, I was the one guy who finally had to stand up and say, enough, we're going to leave. And that, you know, that's...
And how did it turn out?
Well, you know, the next few days were just like, were sort of a blur because, you know, we had this agreement with them, you know, after all the years we had been together, to sort of do this quietly and respectfully, and nobody says anything in public. That's how it was supposed to be. It didn't quite turn out that way because they just had to just take one little shot on our way out the door. That the morning we signed that agreement, they just issued this little statement that they had decided to cancel the publication of the book. And we're like, oh, okay, I mean, come on. It's like you're intentionally like just trying to ruin me on the way out, you know, make me damaged goods. And so we just had to respond and clarify, and the next day it was literally front page news in Publishers Weekly.
Yeah, this is unprecedented for those who aren't familiar with the publishing industry. That an author canceling a contract, an author canceling a contract at all is almost unheard of. But to do it within 2 months of the publication is just amazing. I don't even know if that's the right word, but
Terrifying.
terrifying. And yeah, I can understand. But I can, as a fellow author, I can also understand why you would do that, because you want to make sure this book gets in as many hands as possible. And I think going with Penguin Putnam was the right. I mean, of course, you didn't know at the time, did you?
No, there were no guarantees that. I mean, we thought this was in the middle of the summer. We thought it would take all summer and be after Labor Day, and maybe we start. But the galleys were out there, and that day, Shane got calls from 10 other publishers. Sometimes it was different imprints in the same house, and by that night, it was literally that night, he was on the phone with Ivan Held, who was the president of Putnam. And we had an agreement for a new 4-book deal. It was just that quickly it happened. But this whole story, it really just touched a nerve, I think, with a lot of writers. And it really wasn't about me anymore so much. It's just really what a lot of writers had gone through.
Oh, you had become the hero to a lot of us. Believe me. Now, having read the book, were you surprised at all that he was able to snap up another publisher that quickly?
No, but I also knew that you were getting a lot of support from some real heavyweight writers and some good backing.
Yeah, I mean, I was very fortunate. I mean, Michael Conley and Lee Child and Harlan Coben and Don Winslow had really come out for this book. And they were very supportive through the whole process, too, as I made this move. And they were just great. It really shows you what people are like in this field. I mean, there's some really great people. And then, after it finally got on its new track, Stephen King came out. And that was a total surprise. We didn't even know that he had the book. But we get up one morning and he's tweeted, "Trust Stephen King. This book is the real deal." So that's a good tweet to look up.
That is a good day. So, The Second Life of Nick Mason, I think, can easily be called a high concept novel. I mean, it's a premise that you can explain to people and you want to read it immediately. Was there a single spark that gave you this idea, or did it just come from the writing? You say, I've read that you like just sitting down and writing and seeing what happens. So how did this come about?
I mean, I did 10 books that way with Alex McKnight. And that's how I sort of found those stories. But I think I learned a lot doing that. And in this case, I really wanted to have a better idea up front. And so really, again, going back to Shane, we were talking back and forth about some different ideas, and a couple of them sort of came together, and that's how we got these circumstances that this character would be in. And from there, you just sort of fill in what this guy's background is. Pretty early on, it felt like Chicago was the right place for him to come from. I mean, it's just this. I was just there a couple days ago, and just reminded myself what an amazing city Chicago is, and also what sort of heartbreaking things they've been going through. I mean, for a long time, with all the violence and the corruption they just can't seem to shake there. I mean, you're nodding your head like you're from Chicago. Okay, but I mean, it's like it's this amazing city that has different worlds. I mean, the South Side is the South Side. It is a world of its own, and he's from Canaryville. He just had to be from a place like that. And the North Side, where he ends up when he comes back from prison, he's come back to Chicago, but it's a Chicago he never really knew. I mean, Lincoln Park from Canaryville, that's a whole different world, isn't it? I mean, and then the West Side, that's a whole world of its own too. So you start to fill in these things. Where does he come from? What did he do to get there? Nick is a career criminal. I mean, this isn't. There's no excuse here. There's no gimmick about him being an innocent man who's trying to prove his innocence or anything. I mean, he's in prison because he grew up as stealing cars and then doing robberies, and then he tried to go straight, and he tried to settle down, and he got married, and he had a daughter. Then he made a terrible mistake, and that's how he ended up back in prison. So again, this is you start to see where he came from, how he got there. You start to see that what really matters to him. I mean, he takes this deal to see his family again. He takes this deal to try to see if he can be with his ex-wife again. And more than anything at all, he takes this deal to be with his daughter, who's 9 years old, and it's been 5 years since he ever even saw her. So, I mean, if you put yourself in that position, I mean, you would do anything to get out of prison to see your daughter again. I think.
And he's not an evil guy. In fact, he has a very strong moral code. He's loyal, and he's kind to the people that are close to him. He has a sense of justice, but he hates the Cubs. Loves the White Sox.
He's a South Sider. Of course he hates the Cubs. Yeah.
But he does some pretty horrible things in the book.
He does.
And also Michael in The Lock Artist, which, if you haven't read, the Edgar Award-winning book, fantastic book, was also a professional criminal who spends time in prison.
Yeah.
And so what interests you about writing main characters that have these kind of dubious backgrounds and moral codes?
Well, they're more interesting for one thing. But I mean, after I did 7 McKnight books about an ex-cop living in Paradise, Michigan. And I took a break because it's good to try something totally different. And Michael was something totally different. He's a young character. He's a safecracker. He's sort of dragged into a life of crime, but he is a criminal, and he doesn't talk too, which is the other thing about him. But
yeah, I want to talk about that.
Yeah, and then I went back to Alex, and I went back. I sort of really saw this is great. You go back and you're a better writer because you've just done this whole different thing, and you come back with a whole new perspective on that first series. And I thought that the next book, Misery Bay, was the best book in that series because I had come back after taking that long break, and I was dying to get back to him and dying to see what he was up to next. It was just a great feeling to be back in that world again. And then I did 3 more books, and it was, it feels like it's time to take a break again. And this time, I really wanted to do something really different and start a whole new series. It was time to really do that, and that's where Nick Mason came from.
And you're originally from Michigan.
I am, yeah.
But you live in New York now.
I do.
How familiar were you with Chicago before you started writing the book?
Growing up in Michigan, you sort of think of Chicago as the sister city of Detroit. But I went there and I spent all this time there, and I realized that it's really something else entirely. It's really there's no other city like Chicago. There's nothing like it. I mean, and that's how you get to know a place. You have to go there. You have to spend time there. You have to talk to people. I have a good friend who's a journalist there, and I have a good friend who's a homicide detective there. And that's really interesting, talking to a homicide detective in Chicago these days. I mean, that's already a tough job. And these guys get up, and there are 12,000 cops in Chicago. There are 100,000 gang members. So already, the odds are against you. And then when you add in all these scandals and these things that take away that trust that the public has in the cops, it makes it all the harder. So it was really amazing to talk to him and what he's going through. But he loves being a cop, and he loves Chicago, and I could tell. So I wanted to get that. I mean, I've got a cop in this book, and I wanted to get that feeling of somebody who just does that job because he has to, and that's where Sandoval came from. Again, you just have to. That's what a crime writer does. You have to just go and live in this world and see what it feels like to be in a place or to do a certain thing. When I was working on Michael, I found the best safecracker in the world. And I spent all this time talking to him about what it feels like to open up a safe. And I can't do it myself. But I did learn how to pick locks for that book. And I do still pick a lock every day. Because you have to practice, you have to do it every day, or you lose your touch. So I have all these lock picks next to my writing desk, seriously, and all these locks, and just to clear my head, Some people do yoga, and I open up a lot. That's life as a crime writer, right?
Well, I mean, I could tell by the descriptions you put in the book that you had, really researched how it happened. I mean, you say in the book that I can tell you everything, but I can't really teach it to you unless you have the
Right,
touch and
right,
you're on it.
right.
So I don't feel like you're giving anything away to criminals when you're explaining how to do it in the book.
Probably not, but he actually did. He actually did have me.
Did somebody write to you say thank
no,
you for my new career?
He actually, the safecracker actually did have me change one little thing,
Oh, really?
just in case there was somebody out there. It's like Stephen King when he was writing about how to hotwire a car. He tells a story about how the guy who taught him said, let's just change one thing so we're not actually teaching people how to hotwire a car. And it was the same idea.
Feel free to chime in if you have any questions too.
Just wondering if now that you're writing about Nick, you're gonna keep a gun on your desk or a knife.
No comment on that.
I'm interested in some of your influences. I'm reading the book. I'm a big fan of anti-hero and noir. I mentioned that in the article I wrote. And I kept, I felt like you were channeling some Richard Stark, whether it was
Richard,
intentional or not.
No, Donald Westlake was one of my favorite writers, and one of my favorite people for that matter. He was just, I don't know if he's been here with his wife Abby. They were the most gracious, generous, nicest people in the world. And I got to meet him on a big Club Med thing that we did. And I got to tell him how much his writing had meant to me, because I just loved his stuff so much. And the Richard Stark books in particular is where he did the impossible. And he did it a long time ago, back when it must have seemed like a crazy idea to write a book about this criminal, just unforgiving, just no apology criminal who just has a pretty simple idea in his life. He's just going to do whatever it takes to make money. And but it's just fascinating. Those books are just a study in how to make you interested in a character, and want to see what happens next, even though it's not a character that you admire. And so, I mean, he was a big influence. Yeah, just seeing how he made that happen, and he wrote what, 17 books? Maybe more.
Now, I'm also interested in the character's name. Now, you may not know this, but Nick Mason is also the name of Pink Floyd's drummer. And so I wonder, did you use that intentionally? Was that coincidence, or was there another way you found the name?
I didn't intentionally name him after Pink Floyd's drummer, no. But Mason, we sort of got the last name first. Mason is such a strong, a mason, the guy who makes bricks.
And you call him Mason in most of the books.
Mason. That's just a solid name. There was a basketball player who played with the Knicks, Anthony Mason. It's like he looked like his name, and it's like that was just a great last name. And then Nick, besides being my son's name, is just there was a movie. What was the movie that we were talking about?
The Sure Thing.
The Sure Thing, John Cusack. He's got a great line in there about somebody says that they're going to name their kid Elliot, and he says you can't name your kid Elliot. Elliot's a kid who eats paste. You have to name your kid something like Nick. Nick is a great guy. Nick is your friend. Nick's your buddy. Nick is the guy who doesn't mind if you throw up in his car. And so Nick is such a great name. And that's why I named my son Nick, And I thought Nick Mason, it's got a good ring to it. I wasn't thinking about the drummer. Maybe that was in there in the back of my head, but as soon as I said it, I knew that was his name.
Has Nick Mason emailed you?
No, he's not.
No.
But I'll
He
send
will.
him. I'll send him a book.
Yeah?
I'd be happy to.
Maybe he thinks it's about him. The second life of Nick Mason. Okay. Now, this has been optioned for Hollywood, right?
Yeah.
Now, I know movies are kind of like the holy grail, but
Yeah.
Mason seems perfect to me for a gritty HBO series. Where are you with whole
Well,
thing.
Lionsgate optioned it, and it was Nina Jacobson who did the Hunger Games, and again coming back to Shane, who is a producer and a screenwriter. He's the other producer for this movie, and Richard Wank, who did The Equalizer, is already working on the script right now, so he's going to do a great job because he's just money. So.
Yeah, I love The Equalizer. I
Oh,
thought
yeah.
that's a great movie.
I thought it was very underrated, actually. I thought. So, I mean, right now, I mean, it's so easy to get a crime fiction movie wrong, and we could probably name a bunch of them off the top of our heads. Authors who've been right here, who've had books that were made into movies, and there's things that they didn't get right. But I think I think we have a good chance to get this one right. I mean, and if they do it right, then they can do a second one and a third one, and make the whole thing out of it.
Are you working on more?
I'm
Are you done with them?
I'm deep into the second
Yeah.
book right now. I really, for the first time in my life, I really can see sort of 7 books ahead.
Wow.
Because once you put this guy in these circumstances and having to be on call and do whatever he's told, if you think about it, it can take him anywhere. And it's going to take him anywhere, everywhere. And actually, if anybody here has read the Alex McKnight series, I'm just about to turn in number 11. So Alex is still around. And if you like that series, I hope you like this one too. But there will be a book in the future where these two guys will actually end up in the same book.
That's exciting.
I have a question about
Shoot.
the kind of the background character who's not, the Darius Cole,
Right.
the crime lord, the mastermind of all this. You don't see him, but he's such a heavy influence in the book. I mean, you really see him coming like a freight train, even though his parts in the book are sort of limited.
Yeah, you'll see him in flashback. But he is one of those characters that sort of, you just feel his presence everywhere, even though you don't actually see him. I've always liked that kind of a character who has such a strong presence that he doesn't actually have to be there for you to know that he's there. And Darius Cole is the guy who got him out, which seems like a pretty impossible thing to do, but there are guys, you read about these crime figures who go to prison and they don't miss a beat. It's like, as long as they can stay in contact with the outside world, which is really the key, and they can keep sort of running things pretty well. In fact, there's this thriving black market in cell phones in prisons now. Some prisons actually have to try to block the signals because there's so many cell phones, So
Yeah, I think the Colorado Supermax does that.
yeah. I mean, which is a pretty serious supermax prison.
Yeah.
Yeah. But these are just things that you pick up and you just say these ideas. It's like someday I'm going to have somebody who's in prison who can just keep running his empire, even though he's obviously has a big problem of not being able to leave his cell. But it's amazing what you can do from if you're good enough. I mean, he was good enough to get there in the first place. Now that he just has this little problem of geography, he's still good enough that he can still keep things going.
Now, it sounds like you're very busy with now 2 series, and you said that you recently left your job as technical writer at IBM. So, does that mean how has that transition been, and has that let you accelerate your writing schedule a lot?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, if anybody says I'm retired from IBM, I got news for you. I'm a lot busier now than I ever was, and I'm writing and I'm doing so much other stuff, and I'll get to the point where I have more than 1 book out a year, probably, because that's just what I've always wanted to do. I mean, I worked at IBM for 30 years, and I lived this double life for a long time. And I was going to work every day and working 8 or 9 hours, and I was coming home. And after everybody went to bed, that's when I would write. And I get up the next morning and I do a little bit more, and I go to work. And all my coworkers would go on vacation, and I would go on a book tour, and I'd come out here, which is pretty good, but it was still pretty exhausting, you know, but I wrote 12 books that way. And I had enough success to keep me going. I mean, I won a couple of Edgar Awards and a couple of New York Times notable books.
He says this so blasé. I won a couple of Edgar Awards. Only 2 people have won 2 Edgar Awards, and one of them is sitting right here.
Actually, a third one just did it this year.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So,
And one of them will be here Sunday,
Okay.
John Hurt.
Oh,
well,
he's the
he's
third.
won 2 best. Right. He was talking.
Oh yeah, only 2 have won Best First Novel and Best Novel.
Okay.
And Ross Thomas is not showing up here next week.
No, sadly.
No, sadly not. But yeah, no, but it was a, you know, this is what I always wanted to do, and I finally, this book was the book that was finally going to help me to get there, to this place that I'd always wanted to be, and it took this strange detour. But here it is, finally.
And I think it's possible that in a way it could have even helped it more with all the publicity that you've gotten. Do you think?
Probably didn't hurt.
No such thing as bad publicity.
I guess so, and it's got such a nice cover now, doesn't it?
I just wanted to talk a little about The Lock Artist because I thought that was such a great book. And I'm just, for those of you who don't know the premise, this 17-year-old has become an expert in picking locks and cracking safes, and so he gets sucked into, just by pure chance, into the criminal industry. And the twist is that he had a tragedy when he was young and is now mute, for reasons that aren't really clear in the book until you get farther into it. And I have never read a book where the main character doesn't utter a word in the book. So, first of all, do you remember how you came up with that idea? And then did it ever present plot problems for you or just plot opportunities for you? Because I can see it going both ways.
Yeah, no, it was, that whole book started with just a young character who just felt like he didn't belong anywhere, which is something that we can all relate to when we're 17 years old or at some point in our young life. And I just knew there would be something more to that. It would be a more dramatic thing than just feeling that way. And I knew that there was something had happened to him. And really, I just started playing around with that first chapter. And I just said, what if he doesn't talk? It was just an idea. You know, it's like, what if this guy doesn't talk at all? Could I actually do that? Because it is told in first person. So he actually is talking to you as the person that he's telling the story to. So I just tried it. And I just kept going. And it felt like, to paraphrase St. Martin's Press, the biggest mistake I'd ever made in my life, more than once, because it really was a challenge. Getting to a point where he can't interact with the other characters in the story in the normal way that humans do, which is talking to them. And this girl that he loves, he can't talk to her. I mean, it's hard enough, the girl that you love, that you want to be with when you're 17 years old. Imagine if you can't even talk. So, but as much as it was a challenge, as much as it did seem like a mistake, I knew it was the right thing to do, just to keep going. And so that's why it was a really hard book, but I got through it, and it felt like I had really done something really different.
Yeah, and especially with the way you constructed the plot, going back and forth between in time periods,
Right.
Which was actually reflected in a later book that you might have heard of called Gone Girl. It was really kind of, it struck me as kind of similar, but of course Steve's book was before that. Now you said, you mentioned that you wrote it in first person, and you write your Alex McKnight books in first person, but Second Life of Nick Mason is in third person. Right. What made you decide to make that transition?
Well, that was part of doing something really different this time, and having a series like this, you really want multiple points of view, because there's this dynamic between the cop who wants to put him back in prison and Nick Mason. And I really wanted to see it from both perspectives. So that's why it seemed like a natural, this is the time to really do a third person book, and I think it worked out.
Yeah. We also get to bring in the other bad guys.
That's right. Yeah, it's funny how the worst villains in this book are a bunch of cops. And again, going back to the research that it took that went into the whole Chicago angle on this book, it was amazing to me. You go back in Chicago's history, you don't have to go back to Al Capone. You just go back 10 years to find this group of cops that were the real life component of that I based SIS on. There was this real crew of cops called SOS, the Special Operations Section. And these guys were given that same kind of authority just to go out and do whatever it took to take drugs off the street, take guns off the street. And they did some stuff that you just can't make up. I mean, they started taking these suspects back to their houses and cleaning out all their money, and then kidnapping them later and torturing people. And one of the ringleaders actually tried to kill another cop who was threatening to cooperate with the investigation that finally brought him down. I mean, it's stuff that, I mean, it's stranger than fiction, and it's just horrible. But at least in a book, you get to make them all pay for it, you know. And in real life, it doesn't work that way. I mean, these guys, there's only one of them still in prison, and none of the bosses above them who knew exactly what they were doing ever paid anything for this. It's that same kind of secrecy that still exists in that city. It's that they still have to deal with and it's still, that's why you have a cop who can just empty his gun into a kid on the street and not have to face any consequences until the dash cam finally comes out a year later after the mayor has won his re-election. You know, it's the Chicago way is what they call it. But if you live there, you must get sort of numb to it, I would think.
Well, you do a great job in the book kind of explaining how a cop can start out good,
Right.
but get on that slippery slope. Just one little thing here, one little thing there.
Yeah, once you take that first shortcut, just because, like, you know the suspect had the gun, he threw it away, the report says he had it, because you know that's the right result. You've just taken that shortcut and you falsified a police report. And next time you might plan it on it, because you know he was, you just know that's the right thing, and then just one thing after another, and a few years later, look where you are. I mean, it's just, that's why you really have to, it's such a tricky thing to have that fine line and to get it right and have the right oversight over cops. But
Did you have to work hard to not make excuses for Nick Mason? I mean, I doubt you would have fallen into a cliche of the innocent man, but at the same time, you didn't. He does things that I expected. Okay, he's going to be put in a position where he can't do anything but
Right.
this. And in the first instance, there's a little bit of that, but by that,
Yeah,
by
I know
by that
exactly
moment
what
of
you
the
mean. Yeah.
I mean, I was galvanized by the book, but when we get to the strip club, I am riding the train.
yeah, by the time you get to that scene, and it's funny how if that was the first scene, it might have turned you off.
Yeah.
But
You're right.
you're sort of invested in his character, and you know what he's going through, and you know that he doesn't want to do this stuff, but he's still really good at it. He's good at it in a way that even he didn't know, and that's really one of the most interesting things about this series is that why did Darius Cole picked Nick Mason to be this guy on the outside? He was surrounded by murderers and real, he had his pick of anybody he wanted, and he picked Nick Mason, who had never killed anybody in his life. Why did he pick him? That's why, I mean, Nick doesn't even know why he was chosen. And that's a question that he asked Darius directly, and Darius couldn't even give him a good answer. He just said, I just know. He just has this sense of people, and he sees something in Nick that Nick doesn't even see in himself. And as he goes out and has to do these things, Nick really sort of discovers this is why he picked me, because I'm better at this than I even thought I would be.
Well, and I think Cole also sees the moral code that he operates under, and so I think he finds that can be useful.
Exactly. Yeah. Nick lives by this code. He has all these rules that he follows. It was the night that he broke them all is what got him in prison in the first place. But that's in their first conversation. Darius sees that. He sees this is a guy who lives by the same kind of code that I did. Maybe all the rules might not be the same, but he lives by that by code, and I can use this. And this guy's very useful to me.
I have a very writerly question for you. Now that you have 2 series that you're working on, there are a few different schools of thought about aging characters in series. You've been working on Alex McKnight for 11 books now. Some writers like Michael Connelly let their characters age in real time,
Right.
so now Harry Bosch is retiring because he's retirement age. Lee Child has aged Reacher somewhat, but not
Right.
quite in real time.
A little bit.
Kinsey Millhone has stayed the same age, but
Yeah.
she still lives in the 80s.
Right.
And then, of course, there's the Simpsons approach, where they don't age at all, but they still interact with contemporary settings and technology. So, how do you decide what to do? Because I don't know what to do with that with some
Right, yeah.
series either.
I wasn't thinking of that for the first book, because I wasn't thinking about book 2 or 10. Alex McKnight was pushing 50 when I was writing that first book, and I was not even 40 yet. So somehow I've caught up to him. And I'm pretty sure I'm a little,
Seems really young.
I'm a little older than he is now. Because if I let him age at the same rate that I was, he'd be 70 years old now. And it's bad enough he goes out and gets his ass kicked in every book now. If he was 70, that would be sort of abusive, wouldn't it? So Alex is still kind of 50-ish, you know, and Nick is in his 30s, which is an easier age to sort of work with because you've got a little bit more leeway there. You can turn 40 and that's okay, you know, you can lose a step. I think I just sort of accidentally came into they age sort of the Lee Child approach. They
But
age, but not quite as much.
But they're
as
using
the-
smartphones and Google. They're not using telephone books and
and
you know
rotary
paper
phones,
maps
yeah.
and stuff like that back. So
Exactly.
he's contemporary, but yeah, it's a hard.
It is, but with the Alex McKnight series, I had a great advantage setting it in the Upper Peninsula, where nothing ever changes.
I was wondering if you've ever encountered somebody reading your book in the wild, and did you approach that person or leave them alone to?
I have seen people reading the books, and I have been terrified to say a word to them. For whatever reason, I just want to leave them alone. I just sort of silently wish them every good blessing in life, but I have never gone up to somebody and asked them.
Yeah, from every story I've heard from authors who have done that, including Clive, it almost never goes well.
Exactly, that's exactly what I was going to say. I've heard such horrible stories.
Yeah, just a short one. Joe Finder, who was a best-selling author, was on a plane, and the guy next to him happened to be reading his latest book. And he turned to the guy, you know, he was going to introduce himself, and he turned to the guy and said, "So, what do you think of the book?" The guy goes, "It's just something I picked up in the store. It's okay, I guess." And Joe went, "Oh, okay." Never told him he was the author. So, yeah, I think oftentimes it does not go as you have it in your mind. And along those lines, do you read your reviews? Do you read professional reviews, online reviews? And if so, are there any that are particularly memorable?
Yes, actually. It's funny you should ask that. There was a review, well, first of all, this is the first time I've ever gotten some of these reviews for this book. I mean, Janet Maslin is one of the reviewers for the New York Times, and this book was on the front page of the art section for the first time. That was just mind-blowing. And Wall Street Journal, but it was the Esquire review this week. The Esquire review came out, and it was like, and this woman who wrote it, I literally, I swear to God, this is true. I called my wife up and I said, "Before you read this review in Esquire, I have to tell you one thing. I have never touched this woman." That's how good the review is.
Okay, now we all have to go
Now you
look
have
that
to
up.
go read it.
Sounds like pretty steamy. Have, because your locations are so specific, do you ever get emails from readers trying to correct you whether you're wrong or not on locations or settings that you've used?
Yes, I mean, all writers get that. I mean, if you set it anywhere, you're gonna get somebody saying that you're gonna pick out something. Paradise, fortunately, it's just one blinking light, so it's hard to get that too wrong. Although I do have somebody actually point out that the light was, I don't know, which side is blinking yellow and which side is but yeah, I mean, but that's the thing that you're afraid of so much, that you want to make sure that you get all this stuff right, and you do spend so much time there, because God forbid you get the name of the street wrong, or have a one-way street going the wrong way, or just call it something that's just tone deaf, you know, like call it something a boulevard that's an avenue, or whatever the local term for it is, you know. So that's why you just want to go there and just really, just get all that stuff right. And the same goes with ammo in a gun.
Yeah, oh, gun stuff. Don't get gun stuff wrong.
Yeah, so
Ever.
well, when you do get it wrong, and it has happened, and somebody writes you an email, that's your opportunity not to get offended and not to write back, but to say, thank you, you're hired. And then to use that person, because they will love the idea that they're such an expert that from now on you're going to send them every draft, and they're going to make sure that you never make that mistake again. So I did sort of collect a few people.
That's a great idea. Before I open it up for questions, did you have anything else you want to ask?
Go ahead.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions for Steve? Don't be shy. Yes.
You can even pass this around.
I'll talk loudly. I don't like those things.
I'll repeat it.
I have finished your book, and I don't want to ruin it for anyone. I really loved it, and I am now reading The Lock Artist, which I think is even better.
Better, okay.
It's just wonderful. There's one relationship in the Nick Mason book that I didn't quite get, and that's the relationship, I don't want to ruin it for anyone, between he and the woman in the pet shop.
Right.
Every other relationship was just right on, and I didn't get that one, so maybe you could talk about it without ruining the book for anyone?
Did everyone hear the question?
Nick and the woman in the pet shop, Lauren.
Lauren.
That's a funny one, because she's the one person who is totally innocent and totally uninvolved in everything that goes on in this book. Even his roommate, Diana, I mean, has a relationship with Cole, who clearly goes back years. Lauren is the one figure that sort of just, and so for him, she really represents something, and and that's why he has this interest in her. And at the end of this book, you're right, we don't want to give anything away, but I mean, she's going to be in the next book, and I think you're going to see something from that relationship that will make it more clear what he can have and what he can't have in this new life of his, and what he just has to let go of. You know, I mean, I'm sort of putting it off, but just buy the second book is what I'm saying.
Yeah, I've already talked to Steve about some other things that were unresolved in the book, and I definitely want to find out, but I don't want to give it away. You got a question?
I want to go to the movie.
Yes.
Are you going to have input as far as actors?
Well, I've already been talking to the screenwriter about, he's so good that I know he's going to do a great job, and we've had some great questions back and forth about who this guy is and what he's going through. I don't know who's going to play him.
Chris Pratt.
I know it won't be Tom Cruise.
You sure? He's too tall.
I mean, because he's like, what, 6'5", 240 pounds?
I think I saw a question over here.
Oh,
Yes.
I'll ask it. You said to be a crime writer, you have to really immerse yourself in that world.
Yeah.
How much so? Are you actually randomly picking criminals and having them like show you, pretty much giving you like a tour in the bad neighborhoods? And I mean, how far into it do you go into that?
the best way to learn to meet criminals is to hang out with cops, actually. As opposed to going, you sort of, going right to the criminal is kind of tough. Although,
Steve is a gang member.
yeah. I have no idea what that gang's name was. If I've offended anyone with that gang's name.
I think it was from your American Sign Language days.
Yeah, but no, I mean, with the safecracker, for instance, I mean that, and when I say safecracker, he's not a criminal. He's a legitimate guy who opens up safes, but he knows safecrackers, the illegal kind, and he's the best guy to talk to about what it's like to be a criminal because he feels that temptation that they do, and he's never succumbed to it. But he knows safecrackers who have. So, I mean, that's as close as you want to get, I would think, to a real criminal safecracker. And again, I mean, with gang members and real hardcore criminals, I mean, I visited them in prison. That's actually a really good way to get an insight into what brings them there.
You visited them in prison.
Yes.
Are you randomly just choosing to?
No. These are people. I mean, you sort of through various channels of people you can visit. I mean, they love getting visitors, for one thing. And by the way, this is going to sound like a strange recommendation, but if you ever get a chance to go and visit somebody in a maximum security prison, and I hope it's not somebody close to you, but if you get that chance, you have to do it because it's something you will never forget. It is the most amazing experience because your body or your mind knows that you're getting out of this place in like 2 hours, but your body doesn't know that. And your body has this animal, visceral reaction to being in this place. And when those doors close behind you, there's nothing like the sound of a prison door closing. And once you're inside that place, it is so, everything is different. The air is different. The light is different. All the warm light of the world is gone. It's just this harsh, artificial light. And there's a smell inside a prison that is unlike anything else. It's not, I mean, it's not the worst smell, but it's this antiseptic mixed with just hopelessness and despair. It's really the best way that I can describe it. You'll never smell that smell anywhere else. And when you spend some time in this place, you can't help wonder, like, what if this was real for me? What if they weren't letting me out in a couple hours? I mean, that would be the worst feeling ever, to actually have to live in a place like that and know that you're not getting out, like forever or for a long time. And that's really sort of one of the first little ideas I had about this character, is that thinking back to that feeling that I had, that I would do anything to get out of this place if I ended up there. And again, that's just what a crime writer does. You just want to experience those moments and save them because you know you're going to use it someday.
Is it time to sign?
Not quite. I feel like we can't top that. That was just such an amazing answer that might be a very good note to stop our live stream. Have we stopped our live stream?